If someone in need comes to us for help, how can we say no? Especially when they're elderly and vulnerable. But it's what Meals on Wheels is being forced to do. Turn them away because of a lack of money. A service born 70 years ago, it's far more than just delivering meals. It's a smile, someone checking in, a connection that's now at risk.
Nicole, this is where the magic happens.
It is.
How good does that smell?
Oh, yeah. There's nothing like that home-cooked meal.
Just got to get some greens.
You have never tasted food until you've tasted this food out of our Meals on Wheels kitchen.
The taste of a fresh, home-cooked meal is one thing, but in this kitchen, it's the feeling that comes with the food which makes it special.
So it is all packed out and ready to rock and roll for 11:30.
So then we hit the road.
We hit the road.
Door to door.
Door to door. With the smiles on our clients' faces is just what makes it, it just pulls at the heartstrings.
In the growing but small town of Picton on Sydney's outskirts, Meals on Wheels has been quietly nourishing bodies and souls for more than 40 years.
Knock, knock, Meals on Wheels. Hi, Stephen.
But for the first time, the volunteers and workers here have had to say no to the elderly and vulnerable, as the iconic Australian service begs the government for help, claiming it's been starved of funding.
It hurts. Never ever, in my whole 20 and a half years, never ever have I had to say no. It's not fair. I'm seeing these people down the street. I'm a local girl, so I see these clients down the street. They're ringing every week, asking, can I get the meals? Have I progressed in the queue?
Out here, it's been described as the Hunger Games.
Government funding hasn't increased for years and years.
Just like most of us, the not-for-profit Meals on Wheels is struggling to cope with the rising cost of food. Picton Chair Sandra Bartlett.
Each meal costs $23. The government gives us a subsidy of $13 and the client pays the remainder.
But funding's not based on need, it's capped. It's left this charity paying out of its own pockets where it can. While some Meals on Wheels branches have closed, in Picton, it's meant no more clients. The isolated and vulnerable left to fend for themselves in an area where options are few.
And Meals on Wheels was always been one of the things that I knew was there for me.
Pat's been on a waiting list for months.
I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
I'm very annoyed about it because, well, what's left for us?
The Meals on Wheels journey started in Melbourne when Mrs. Watts took off on a tricycle in 1953. Doris Taylor took the kitchen to the streets in South Australia a year later. By 1957, Sydney City Council and its volunteers went to work preparing 150 meals. And the wheels would keep spinning. An Australian icon born, which would grow to deliver 10 million meals a year for 200,000 supporters.
One day it might be sausages, next day it might be fish, next day it might be chicken.
Yeah.
It still depends where they cook.
You're eating like a king.
I know. Should be a king.
Yeah, mate, it sounds like it. That's awesome. Tell me though, what would you do without Meals on Wheels?
I'll be lost.
And right now, some of Stephen's neighbours are.
I ask you, and I also ask the people that are watching, whose responsibility is it? Isn't it time that we stood up, stepped up, and really spoke up for these people?
I just keep this brave face, but there's lots of tears, lots of tears. Why should we be saying no to our aged? You know, we're talking, I had to reject a 92-year-old. How do you say no to a 92-year-old that can't have a meal? That's not fair.
Paul Sadler is the chair of Meals on Wheels. Paul, I'm sad, I'm mad watching that. How do we say no to a 92-year-old who needs a hot meal? I mean, it's not who we are as a country, is it?
No, it shouldn't be. What we, for 70 years, have done so well is provide meals to those who are truly in need, and we haven't had to say no before.
So how did it reach this point?
What's happened is we've not received any new funding for meals services through the Commonwealth Home Support Program for 5 years now. The last increased funding was in 2019. We did get helped through the pandemic by the government, but we've reached the point where the number of older people is exceeding the number that we can help, and the funding, the government's contribution is not keeping pace with the costs, particularly the meal costs.
I mean, I still remember a volunteer, Valerie was her name, who used to deliver meals to my grandma who was in a wheelchair. She was such a lovely woman. She knew all about us grandkids. And that's the thing about Meals on Wheels. It is so much more than a meal delivery service. And to think that people are being denied that, how many of you had to turn away?
So we know that roughly 10% of services on the east coast of Australia have had to close their books. So that means they're not able to take on new clients. My concern would be running now into the hundreds, maybe even thousands of people affected.
OK, so the situation's now desperate. You're a not-for-profit. Where is the government on this?
So we've had very positive conversations both with the government, with the opposition, but we do need the government to step forward and provide additional funding for the Commonwealth Home Support Program.
See, I think you're being a lot more diplomatic than I would be because, I mean, yes, they might all agree that this is necessary, but you are right now having to say no to very vulnerable elderly people, and that is not good enough.
And that can't continue. We have to step in and be able to help everybody who needs it.
OK, so what are you asking for today? What do you need?
What we need is the government to adopt the principles of funding that the Independent Health and Aged Care Pricing Authority is putting forward. The second thing we need is the government to improve the funding that is available for extra help.
OK, so you say they're on board to the message. How soon do you reckon you're going to see that money that you need?
I'm not positive that it's going to come immediately. What the government can do is help individual services who get into trouble and have to close their books, and we hope they will do that. But the government had a funding round earlier this year. It didn't release any new money for meals delivery services. It's an opportunity we've missed, and we need to see investment into this very important area.
I just don't think in any way that it is good enough, what we're seeing. These people need to be looked after. Many of them served our country. The least we can do is knock on their door and give them a hot meal.
I agree.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your time.